Hey guys, and welcome to Arcane Assist. This week we're doing something a little bit different. So at the Sioux, I had the opportunity of playing Breachstorm with Trevy. Trevy, how's it going?
Not too bad.
Do you want to introduce what Breachstorm is to us?
Yeah, absolutely. So Breachstorm is a new sci-fi miniatures game that's going on Kickstarter in July. It's a sort of small-scale squad-on-squad combat game. So usually a team consists of about 6 to 8 miniatures per side. It plays super fast on a 3x3 board, and a full game of Breachstorm lasts less than an hour, so you can get it in real quick.
Yeah, all of those are super good things too. With a lot of miniatures games these days, you're looking upwards of hour and a half, 2 hours, looking at a lot more miniatures than this. But after the demo we've played, I'm feeling like this is feeling a lot different and playing a lot quicker than a lot of games I've played recently. So yeah, let's just hop into the demo and we can get a bit of the mechanics and game down. So here's the table. Trevy, why don't you talk a little bit about the terrain and what all of this really means?
Sure. So this is the demo scenario we have set up. So it's a little bit of a pared down version of a full game of Breachstorm. Obviously, it's on a 2x2 board, whereas the normal game is on a 3x3, and we're only playing 3 models per side. A full game of Breachstorm, the full-size game is 100 points. The demo tends to run about 35 per side, so it's about a third of the side of the full game. But we'll each have 1 field officer model as well as 2 infantry. You can see we're setting up the models on the table right now are from the Zrenthrar Prides faction. They're sort of a felinoid alien race, but they have 2 pack warriors on the table as well as 1 pack leader, who's their field officer. And we're going to have some models from the human faction, the Homeworld Confederacy, on there, and they have a fire team leader as well as 2 riflemen as their infantry. The core of the game is sort of alternating activations where players will take turns activating those field officer models, and during their activation, the field officers can activate infantry. So obviously, in the demo, we're just sort of going to show off some of the core mechanics, but we're not really going to have that alternate activation coming up too much since we each only have 1 officer. But those 4 sort of small pieces of terrain in the center, or 5, I guess, if you have that console in the middle, are sort of considered low terrain. What we wanted to do when we made the game was make it 2D terrain friendly. So those are just templates, and the templates for those will be included in the full game as 2D terrain. But they are essentially in War Machine, they work like linear obstacles that you can draw line of sight over and shoot over, but they do provide cover and obscure shots. The Zren team on the right side there is trying to get a vital piece of intelligence that one of their models is carrying. The model in the top right, you can see it has a little token next to it, just behind it, and it's trying to get it into the gray zone towards the bottom of the screen. On the other side, the Homeworld team is trying to call in some air support to stop their ship from being able to escape with that vital intelligence, and so they're trying to get to the little console in the center, the round base, and perform actions that will score them victory points. All of the scenarios in the game are asymmetric, and you actually build your objectives into your list when you build your list, so you can sort of build around specific missions. And so in this case, we each score differently, and we'll have to essentially score. We'll score 1 point per turn, and as long as we each keep scoring 1 point, the game will keep tying, but whoever has the most points at the end of a round will win. So if we can stop our opponent from scoring, then we'll win immediately.
So you mentioned that building objectives into your list, is that something like the terminal, or even like putting a zone as part of your list, as if it were a War Machine thing to say, is part of your list?
Right. So when you build your list, you'll pick 2 objectives. You'll pick an attack objective and a defense objective. And so in the demo, these are sort of shrunk down versions of objectives that are in the full game. The Homeworld player here has the raise alarm objective, which deploys that terminal at the start of the game and tells that player how he can score and gives some other benefits as well that you can build your list around. And then this Ren team is trying to complete the retrieve intelligence objective, which deploys the zone and the piece of intelligence that they're trying to capture.
Cool. In terms of terrain, you said that it's going to be a lot of 2D friendly terrain, even as much as we have some awesome, pretty 3D terrain here. How much terrain are you looking to have on the board in this kind of in this game?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, terrain's actually going to be included in the game as sort of punchboard 2D versions, but obviously you can use your own collection or build that up however you want. But this table actually has most of a full table worth of terrain on it. So those four, the two walls and the two square pieces in the center, as well as the three buildings, and there are two more pieces of terrain, a piece of difficult terrain, and then an obscuring terrain piece, which works like a forest or a cloud. And those actually get deployed by the players before the game starts. So, once you pick your objective and then you deploy the terrain, you've sort of started to, shape your strategy before any models even hit the table.
Nice. Sounds good. So now we're just rolling some dice. This is where you're explaining how the basic dice mechanic works to me. So why don't you go and explain to the folks at home how exactly this works?
Yeah, sure thing. So your weapons have an accuracy value, which tells you how many dice you get to roll for an attack. So most of the guys on the table are sort of basic grunts that have a 3 accuracy value, but some of the melee attacks have accuracy 4. There are a bunch of buffs as well that'll change the amount of dice we get to roll, but regardless of the number of dice you roll, you always pick 3 of them to choose for your result. So in this case, we've dropped some dice for cover, I think, on what's going on. But we'll pick 3, and then the result, you'll subtract the target's evade value, which is essentially their defense. And you'll compare the result of that to a little chart. You can see the 3 colored bands on the weapon profiles on the model's profile cards there, and each one of those will have an associated value of the result pool of your roll, and tells you how much damage you do. So, regardless of you could roll a million 6s, but you're going to be capped at whatever the critical value of your weapon's damage is.
Yeah. So to make, just obviously because this is a new game coming out, to make some comparisons to other games, it feels a little bit like Malifaux's weak, moderate, severe damage system if you took that and put it with dice.
Yeah, it's very similar. And we've also sort of meshed the cover mechanics with the dice mechanic as well. So instead of simply adding to your defense like it does in War Machine or something like that, if you're firing at a target behind cover, you're actually going to remove the highest die from your rolls before you pick your 3. So there isn't any there's never a point at which you have to sort of add or subtract from your evade. You're just going to, pretty easily drop that highest die out. If you shoot at somebody who is obstructed by terrain but isn't necessarily base to base with it, so for example, there's a pack warrior there who's hiding behind some boxes but isn't up against them, then the attacker would get -1 die, but they wouldn't necessarily have to remove their highest. So it's essentially removing a random die instead of, the highest die.
Yeah. So right now, you've activated your field commander for the red squad, and he's spent an order token to activate one of the 2 members of his squad. So how exactly does that work?
Yeah, so sort of when it comes to a player's turn to activate a model, they will receive a number of order tokens equal to an order value. So they'll pick a field officer, and the field officers generate order tokens. And they can spend order tokens on some special abilities. They can also spend them to activate infantry that are around them. And so how that works is that essentially you interrupt the officer's activation, and you move over to the infantry, and the infantry generates actions that they can spend to move and make attacks. Interact with scenario elements, anything like that. So right now, the officer sort of spent his first action to move up to that console, then activated the rifleman on the bottom there to move up and take some shots. And you can see the Zren pack warrior there is actually dodging in response to an attack that he took. But that interrupts the field officer's activation. He still has his tokens on him, and so once the rifleman's done, it'll bounce back to the field officer, and he can continue to spend those action tokens to make attacks or move or in whatever order he wants. The idea is that we wanted the models to feel, sort of like action heroes, so they're going to have super fluid activations where they can do a bunch of different things, all at once in one activation.
So here you're throwing down some concentrated fire tokens on my models just because you've shot at them, which helps out your troopers later in the turn that are taking actions against models that have already been shot at.
Yeah, so one thing we wanted to do is make each faction feel super unique with its own unique mechanic. So for the Homeworld Confederacy, in this case, they have that concentrate fire mechanic, which will give out those cool little yellow tokens to any enemies that they shoot at, regardless of whether or not they hit. And those tokens will give any subsequent models that shoot at that +1 accuracy, so it's a whole extra die for every one of those tokens that you have. On the other side, the Zrenthrar have a sort of a strict code of honor that tells them to die gloriously in battle. So if I take any of their models out, they're actually going to generate Fury tokens for the rest of the models in their team, which they can spend to make additional melee attacks. So those guys are very close range oriented, but as they run into the teeth of a gun line, they're going to lose some models, but the ones that get there will be very effective.
Yeah, seems like a good mechanic to have for a close combat army that's going to be running into some guns.
Yeah, absolutely. They also have a bunch of interesting ways to interact with those Fury tokens. They have support models that can move them around and generate new ones. So you can have some, real powerful late game beat stick models that you can sort of siphon Fury tokens into, and then once they come in rounds 2 or 3, they'll just come in and start deleting enemy models.
Mm-hmm. So you've ordered your other model now. He's just shooting at this pack warrior that's behind the cover.
Yeah, rolling like garbage too.
He's done a couple damage, but he's not doing too great. I think another interesting point about what's happening or has happened throughout these shots you're taking at me is that I have the option of using some of my defensive maneuvers or the reactions in terms of the pack warriors have dodge, so they can make a 2-inch push in kind of any direction after they get shot. And the pack warrior has resist as a reaction, which means he takes half damage.
Yeah, the pack leader has that, yep.
Yeah.
And that's common across most field officers. They'll have resist or a similar ability. Because officers are very important, they make your infantry more effective when they activate them, and obviously they can allow groups of infantry to activate together. So losing them is a pretty bad time, so you want to keep them alive so they're a little harder to kill.
Makes sense.
So there's actually a couple of those defenses in the game you can use that have different effects. There's one, in addition to dodge, which lets, like you said, the model push 2 inches after it gets hit. There's ones that allow your models to make free melee attacks. There's ones that sort of generate new tokens for them. And so there's still a lot of reactionary play during your opponent's activation. And some models in the game also have interrupt actions that they can spend during their opponent's activation. So it's a little bit like Infinity, where there's rarely a point at which you're sort of out of the game, and even while your opponent's activating, because it's an alternating activation system, you're never really not moving models for more than a couple minutes.
Mm-hmm. Another cool little mechanic that you had, I think, used this turn, or you're going to use next turn. Some of your order tokens on your field leaders can be used to do special abilities on the back. One of the pack leaders that I'm about to do, just right off the bat as I rush towards the the humans, is one that gives bonuses to accuracy against models within 6 inches of my pack leader. So he's going to pop that with an order and then just run screaming up the table.
Yep. Yeah, so you can see he's getting 3 order tokens here, and he's gonna burn 1 for that pack tactics ability. That's a really powerful ability. Obviously makes his pack warriors significantly more effective. And there are other field officer options for this Ren team, but if you're going to bring a mass of pack warriors, the pack leaders are super important to sort of buff them up. But obviously they sort of need to lead from the front. They have to lead the pack, so they have to get up there and get enemy models up within 6 inches of them to broadcast that aura out. So I think it's only getting my frontmost Marine there who's in front of that wall. So
yeah, just the one.
Yeah, so I think he's going to get lit up pretty soon and probably get rinsed pretty quickly.
Yeah, so he walks up, he pops that up, and then he's going to take a shot. He doesn't benefit himself with it, because obviously him telling himself what to do isn't going to help him very much. But it's going to help him when he orders his friend to do so, which will happen quite shortly. So he takes a shot. His shot's not too effective. He just does a couple points of damage, but the pack warrior is going to get an extra die when he goes to shoot.
Yeah, so we can see there the pack leader rolled 4 dice for his attack. He's an accuracy 4 ranged weapon. Evan dropped the lowest one because you only get to pick 3. You can see he has a 9 there for his total. The Marines have an evade value of 6. That leaves the pack leader with a result of 3, and on his weapons chart that does 3 damage. So he's dealing some damage to the Marines. Now, the Homeworld Confederacy tends to have fairly high armor values. They have a lot of sort of powered exoskeletons and stuff like that. So they they actually can reduce the amount of damage they take from an attack as their defense. So unlike the Pack Warriors, they aren't quite as speedy, and they are not able to move as a reaction to attacks, but they do take less damage. We're seeing the Pack Warrior here perform a Storm action, which is a cool action you can do once per activation. That gives you, for the low cost of 1 action token, that gives you a 3-inch move and then a ranged attack. Now, you can only perform that once per activation, but you can chain it into another action called Assault, which the Pack Warriors gain from their pack leader, which allows you to move 3 inches and make a melee attack. So this Pack Warrior is sort of running and gunning. So as he's charging down the field, he's able to take a shot with his gun, deal some damage, and then get into melee for a big melee swing with an accuracy of 5 due to the pack leader's pack tactics.
Mm-hmm. These cat people are certainly scary once they get into melee.
Yeah, not quite when you roll like that, though.
No, that's very true. That's that was not an ideal roll, but they have some scary melee capabilities here.
Yeah, and you can imagine these are just the basic grunts. There are some characters in there that have significantly more powerful melee attacks.
Mm-hmm. So he does his thing, move up really aggressively. He's taking a bunch of damage, so now he's getting mixed into it. And he's ready to die honorably for the pack and dish out some fury tokens for his friends.
Yeah, so as you can see, that rifleman's on his last legs there. I think he's got 2 hit points left now. That Pack Warrior sort of laid into him pretty hardcore. Most of the models on the table have a significant number of hit points. In this case, the Zren models have 12, and the human models have 13. For the most part, that means models are relatively resilient. There's basically never a situation in which you can kill a model in 1 hit. But in a full game, obviously, there are more models on the table, and there's some more powerful attacks. So they tend to be a little more fragile in a full game than they do in the demo.
Mm-hmm. So this guy basically has to run into the circle because you've interacted with your terminal, which gets you a point, and I have to get my point on this turn, or else the game just ends and I lose.
Yep, that would not be great for you.
So he moves twice and then does a storm action to walk and shoot that last rifleman, and it happens to take him out.
Yep. So he was in melee with the Pack Warrior, which imposes a -1 accuracy penalty on people shooting at him. But fortunately, the pack tactics sort of canceled that out, and he was able to hit and take out that rifleman. So super sad times for the Confederacy today.
Mm-hmm. So the last action I took with my pack leader was shooting at your team rifle team leader.
Yep.
And didn't do a whole lot. He was not a good shot there, thanks to your cover.
Yeah, fortunately the cover has really helped me out there. But you can see sort of the pack leader especially can sort of do some yo-yo maneuvers. He can move out and broadcast that +1 accuracy aura, and then after his models have gone and they finish their activations, when it goes back to him, he can just move back into safeties, which is what he's done here.
Mm-hmm.
So that ended the round. Now we checked to see if anybody wins. We're both at 1 victory point right now, so nobody wins the game. And it goes back to my turn to activate my fire team leader. So he's going right now, and unfortunately in the demo, I don't have enough infantry to order with all my order tokens. But there are a couple more things that you can do with them in a full game. So once your infantry start getting taken out, you can purchase bonuses with additional order tokens that you can use. So you can try to spring back in if you're on the down, you're on the getting killed. All your dudes getting killed, and then you'll be able to get some bonuses to try to claw back into the game.
Which is looking at another game that uses orders as a sort of resource mechanic. Infinity doesn't have a very good comeback mechanic. Once you start bleeding orders, you really start to slow down in that game because you just don't have any number of activations anymore. Meanwhile, this gives you additional ways to spend orders, and orders are generated from your leaders as opposed to the number of models you have. So it gives you some extra rubber banding capabilities.
Yeah. And you'll even gain they're called asset points, which you can use to buy special bonuses during the game. You'll even gain those when your models are killed completing mission objectives as well. So even if you lose a bunch, you can usually come back.
So what happened there was the rifleman grunt kind of shot my pack warrior that didn't have a huge number of health left, so he reacted with a dodge to get closer to his friends so that they were in range to gain fury tokens when he died.
Yeah, so the sort of Zren special rule is called Vengeful. So when friendly models get killed within 6 inches of them, they get those big old red fury tokens, and they can use those to buy additional melee attacks or perform assault actions, which they can make melee attacks with. And the sort of the entire faction's design is based around using those fury tokens and generating new ones and moving them around from model to model. So they have a whole bunch of ways, cool ways to interact with them, and they can build cool combos to generate a whole bunch of melee attacks that they can really put the beat down on their opponents with.
Now we've talked a lot about the Zaranthar's special actions with the pack tactics and stuff. What is the I'm terrible with the name.
Homeworld
Confederacy. Yeah. I keep wanting to say like Earthworld Confederacy.
Sure.
Yeah, but that's Homeworld Confederacy. What is their special abilities?
Yeah, so they have that concentrate fire ability, so that obviously will make they can sort of chain activations together to make very accurate attacks. And they have a lot of very powerful modifiers on the higher hit levels of their weapons that are tough to get to. So later in the turn, as models have gone and sort of marked targets for their buddies, they can really start punching through people's defenses with precise modifiers and doing a ton of damage. They also have abilities that will either generate additional concentrate fire tokens to get additional accuracy, or add additional accuracy buffs that will increase the raw number of dice they're rolling. I think a combination of a mission buff as well as a couple officers as well as concentrate fire tokens, I've gotten a rifleman up to accuracy 8 with his ranged weapon. That's the highest we've gotten so far, but it's certainly possible to get higher. Usually models die pretty quickly, but after you've shot that many times at them.
But sometimes you roll bad.
Yeah, sometimes you just don't.
So you've taken a bunch of shots at my pack leader. You've taken some shots at the pack warrior. They're doing all right. I think they're pretty healthy at this point. But the pack leader's ready to roll and get into melee with that last rifleman there.
Yeah, so my models actually used an ability they have called set firing mode, and they were able to sort of turn on the variable payload ammunition that their weapons have and use what's called air burst, which allows me to ignore the cover that the pack leader is getting. Unfortunately, that required some action tokens, so I was a little less efficient with getting a volume of attacks on him. So I think the pack leader is about half dead at this point, but like we discussed before, the field officers are pretty significantly difficult to kill, especially compared to the regular grunts. So I wasn't able to quite take him out. So hopefully I'll be able to finish him off next turn. But I think for now he's gonna really shank this.
With
this
a dice roll like
here.
that, he's gonna tear this man apart.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think those 2 attacks left that rifleman on 1 hit point from full. So that was pretty significant.
And now we're gonna. So I've positioned my my leader pretty far away from the last pack warrior, so he's gonna have to do a storm action to get back into not really coherency, but the range in which he needs to be to issue some orders to him. But he's gonna use that to take a shot at the last rifleman. Fortunately, I have to drop one of those 6s, but it's okay. I have another one.
Yeah. Yeah, so he dropped 1/6 for the. He's hiding behind cover there, and then dropped another one to represent his evade, and was able to take him out. And so it's just down to the fire team leader if he can close out the game. Unfortunately, there's one more pack warrior to go, and he's a little mad that his buddy got taken out. So he's got that fury token. So he's gonna make a boatload of attacks on me, and it's gonna suck.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I have to stick to getting in this zone. Or else I'm just going to auto-lose the game. But we can make some attacks and then move back. We can yo-yo it a bit.
Yeah.
Thanks to how activations work.
Yeah, and definitely because of that that fury token, you have enough efficiency to get in and make multiple attacks and then have an extra action to move out. But obviously, if that guy's not in that zone, if your extraction ship gets there, and drops its lines to repel up, then you're out of luck.
Yeah, I haven't moved the token with him, but he's still the one carrying that objective. He doesn't it doesn't just get dropped off there.
Yeah, Yeah, unfortunately, it sort of gets handcuffed to their little paws, so they it's gotta stick with them.
It's okay. Apparently, it's not hindering the melee attacks.
Yep. Yeah, I think he's actually hitting me with the objective at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one not quite as good, but my fire team leader is running out of hit points pretty quickly at this point. The fire team leader also has that resist defense as well, so he can take half damage from attacks. So he isn't as easy to kill as a rifleman, but he is easier to hit than some of the Zone models. And we can see now he's taking a storm action to move back into the zone and take a shot at me, which actually plinks me for another point of damage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was surprised that even on a 0+, he still gets to do 2 damage and hit you.
Yeah, their guns are actually pretty cool. They have plasma weapons, so you can imagine that even an indirect hit from this bolt of sort of ionized energy is gonna kind of buffet you with superheated gas and hit you and shower you with shrapnel. So they're getting pretty cooked, even if he's not really hitting the target directly.
Mm-hmm. So now you just have your leader left to go. So he has kind of few options. He has to interact with the terminal, or else I just win with the objective in the bottom. So he's going to go do that. And then he kind of wants to take out my pack leader.
Yep. So we're going to try to take some melee attacks. Unfortunately, with rolling like that, we're probably not going to get close enough.
Yeah, so that's you rolled an 8. I have an evade of 7, so you got a 1 total.
Got a big old 1, and I needed a 2 to hit with my melee attack, so unfortunately I missed entirely. So that was pretty embarrassing. He charged up there, all for full of vim and vigor, and then tripped, I think, on the way, and he got
stubbed his toe on a rock.
Yeah, he got 2 damage on the pack leader with his next attack, but unfortunately not quite enough to really do enough damage. And I think it's probably going to be curtains for this guy. He's able to interact with the objective and reposition himself a little bit with his ability. But he has only a handful of hit points left, and this pack leader is going to come in for some vengeance.
Mm-hmm. Still mad about last turn. I mean, he doesn't have a token this time, but he's certainly going to make some assault here.
Yep, so he leaps over that objective there, rolls a boatload of dice, and I think ends up taking me out.
It's either this one or the next one.
Yeah.
But he certainly does the job.
Yep, and there he goes. GG.
So that is the demo game of Breachstorm. So, Trevy, what else do you want to let us know about this game? Like, it's coming in July, you said, on Kickstarter?
Yes. We don't have a hard date yet. So sometime in July is where we're looking at right now. But obviously, we'll have in the near future, we'll have the actual date, and we'll be able to announce that. But we also, if you want to check out our website at breachstorm.com, we're in an open beta period right now. So all of the rules, as well as stat cards, printable standee models for if you want to use those, are available on our website. And we actually do monthly drawings for anybody who submits battle reports and for feedback, because we want to obviously we want to come out with the game that's as balanced and as fun to play as possible.
So, kind of going to just do a rapid-fire number of questions here. Just probably the questions you're getting asked the most at this point.
Sure.
Do you have more factions planned?
Absolutely. So we have 2 more that are designed, and we're currently, creating art for them right now. So they'll be essentially they'll be up on the open beta site probably within the next couple of weeks, hopefully. But those will be stretch goals for the campaign. So hopefully, if enough people are jazzed about the game, and we get enough interest, then we'll be able to fund the sculpting and casting for 2 additional factions, and we'll be releasing with 4.
Cool. So you talked about 2D terrain and the terrain that you're going to be using for this game and how some of it comes in the box. Do you have any 3D terrain planned for the Kickstarter, or are you working with anyone on that, or is it just what you have right now is the 2D stuff?
So unfortunately for the Kickstarter, we just have the 2D stuff. And though, obviously I think the 2D in the box will be punch board, and you'll be able to upgrade to, neoprene or something a little nicer for the Kickstarter. But unfortunately, we don't have 3D terrain planned, but that's absolutely something we're interested in doing. And there's a lot of cool ways we can go. Obviously there are a lot of objectives in the game that have sort of unique objective scenario elements, and so doing sort of faction-specific sculpts for those I think would be amazing too. So that's all stuff that we're looking at down the road. But just for the initial Kickstarter, we're mostly focused on getting the game off the ground.
The tokens you have for the game are fantastic for a game that's not even out yet. What do you what are you doing for that?
Yeah, so those are by Broken Egg Games. Actually, we're working with them, and they did come out amazing. So those are laser cut acrylic tokens, and in the game, those will be included as punch board tokens. But obviously, you'll be able to upgrade to the acrylic ones if you so desire.
Awesome. Are there any last thoughts you want to say about the game, just while we're still here, off the top of your head?
I mean, I think this game, even if you're not sort of looking for a whole new game to dive into, it's plays super quickly. The idea is what we wanted to have a game that could sort of coexist with larger games, sort of army scale, 40K War Machine kind of deal. But my friend and I actually, while we were playtesting this game, we were at a War Machine tournament. We finished our round kind of early. Somebody got pushed down a scenario, and we played an entire game of Breachstorm before the next round of War Machine started. So
that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, so.
I'm super excited to see how this game plays at larger points levels, because I think alternating activation games are kind of one of my favorite kinds of war games, and the way the squad activations in this, even what felt like a full turn kind of game here, felt very fluid, and I want to see how that works when we're going back and forth over 3 squads each. Sure. I think that's going to feel really nice.
Yeah, so if you want to, you can check out our website and our Facebook page. We have some videos up there of full-length games, so if you want to check those out, you can. And like I said before, all the rules are available, so you can check it out. With your buds and play some games before the Kickstarter even goes live. But we've also, there's also a couple more elements. Like I mentioned before, there's tactical assets you can purchase during the game. There's also an upgrade system, so you can customize your models. And one thing we're really excited to do is do some sort of campaign play based around upgrading your models. Some of the upgrades level up and get more powerful, and so you'll be able to play like a Necromunda kind of style campaign system, which I think would be awesome.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, Trevy, for teaching me about your game and coming and showing it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for videoing and having me on. It's been super sweet.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good one.